History is full of strange events that sound too ridiculous to be true, like the time a dancing plague gripped an entire city, or when two nations nearly went to war over a pig. And yes, there was actually a time when the Polish army enlisted a bear as a soldier, but we'll get to that story later. First, let's dive into some of history's most bizarre moments that'll make you question everything you thought you knew about the past. Let's start with the shortest war in recorded history. And no, I'm not exaggerating when I say it didn't last an hour. August 27th, 1896. The place? Zanzibar, an island off the coast of East Africa. The situation? A succession crisis that was about to turn very, very messy. When the pro-British Sultan of Zanzibar died, his nephew, Khalid bin Bargash, decided to seize the throne without British approval. Now, the British weren't exactly thrilled about this. They had their own preferred candidate, and they'd already made it clear that whoever took the throne needed their blessing. The British gave Khalid an ultimatum: vacate the palace by 9 a.m. on August 27th or face the consequences. Khalid, feeling confident, surrounded himself with about 2,800 defenders, armed his palace, and essentially called Britain's bluff. That was a mistake. At 9:02 a.m., British ships in the harbor opened fire. The palace had a wooden structure, which, as you might imagine, didn't hold up well against naval artillery. Within minutes, the palace was ablaze. Khalid's makeshift navy? It consisted of a single royal yacht, which was sunk almost immediately. By 9:40 a.m., it was over. 38 minutes of shelling, and Zanzibar had a new sultan, the one Britain wanted all along. Around 500 Zanzibaris were killed or wounded. British casualties? One injured sailor. Khalid escaped through the back of the palace and sought asylum in the German consulate. The shortest war in history ended almost as quickly as it began, and it stands as a stark reminder of just how lopsided colonial power could be. Now, imagine waking up one day and seeing people dancing in the streets. Not celebrating, just dancing for days without stopping, until some of them literally drop dead from exhaustion. Welcome to Strasbourg, July 1518. It started with one woman, Frau Trophäa. She stepped into the street and began to dance. Not at a festival, not at a party, just dancing. And she didn't stop. For days she danced, seemingly unable to control herself. Within a week, 34 others had joined her. By the end of the month, around 400 people were dancing uncontrollably through the streets of Strasbourg. They danced day and night, barely stopping to eat or sleep. Many collapsed from exhaustion, strokes, or heart attacks. Some died right there in the streets. The local authorities were baffled. They consulted physicians who ruled out supernatural causes. This was the Renaissance, after all. Their diagnosis? Hot blood. Their solution? More dancing. Yes, you heard that right. Officials opened guild halls, constructed a wooden stage, and even hired professional dancers and musicians, believing that if people danced it out, they'd eventually recover. It didn't work. The dancing continued for weeks until, just as mysteriously as it began, it stopped. Historians still debate what caused this. The most accepted theory? Mass psychogenic illness, essentially stress-induced hysteria. Strasbourg in 1518 was dealing with famine, disease, and poverty. Some scholars believe the population was under such extreme psychological pressure that it manifested in this bizarre, uncontrollable dancing. To this day, the dancing plague remains one of history's strangest and most unsettling mysteries. In 1859, the United States and Britain nearly went to war. The cause? An American farmer shot a pig. I wish I was joking. The San Juan Islands, located between what's now Washington State and Vancouver Island, had unclear ownership in the mid-1800s. Both the US and Britain claimed the territory, but they'd been sharing it relatively peacefully. American settlers on one side, British Hudson's Bay Company on the other. Then, on June 15, 1859, an American farmer named Lyman Cutler found a large black pig rooting through his potato garden. The pig belonged to an Irishman, Charles Griffin, who worked for the Hudson's Bay Company. Cutler, fed up with the repeated intrusions, shot the pig. Griffin was furious and demanded $100 in compensation, a huge sum at the time. Cutler offered $10. Negotiations broke down, and British authorities threatened to arrest Cutler. That's when things escalated. American settlers called for military protection. The U.S. sent in troops, led by Captain George Pickett, who'd later become famous at Gettysburg. The British responded by sending 3 warships carrying over 2,000 men. For weeks, the two nations stared each other down over this pig. At one point, there were 461 American soldiers with 14 cannons facing 5 British warships with 2,140 troops and 70 guns. Cooler heads eventually prevailed. Both sides agreed to a joint military occupation of the island until a permanent solution could be found. It took 12 years, but in 1871, an international arbitration panel awarded the San Juan Islands to the United States. The final casualty count of the pig war? 1 pig. It's both absurd and terrifying to think that such a minor incident could have sparked a full-scale war between two of the world's most powerful nations. Sometimes history hangs on the smallest threads. Napoleon Bonaparte conquered most of Europe. He commanded armies of hundreds of thousands. He was one of history's greatest military minds. But in 1807, he was defeated by rabbits. After signing the treaties of Tilsit, which ended the war between France and Russia, Napoleon decided to celebrate with a rabbit hunt. His chief of staff, Alexander Berthier, was tasked with organizing the event. Berthier wanted to make sure it was memorable, so he gathered somewhere between hundreds and thousands of rabbits. Accounts vary. The plan was simple: release the rabbits, and Napoleon and his men would hunt them down in a glorious display of marksmanship. But there was a problem. Berthier hadn't procured wild rabbits. He'd bought tame rabbits, farm-raised animals that were used to being fed by humans. So when the cages were opened, instead of scattering in fear, the rabbits did what they'd been conditioned to do. They ran toward the humans, expecting food. At first, it was amusing. Then it became alarming. Hundreds, possibly thousands of rabbits charged directly at Napoleon and his hunting party. They swarmed his legs, climbed up his jacket, and refused to be driven away. Witnesses described Napoleon desperately trying to fend them off with his riding crop, while his men swatted at the furry horde with sticks. The situation became so overwhelming that Napoleon had to retreat to his carriage. Even then, the rabbits pursued him, leaping onto the coach as it tried to escape. The great Napoleon Bonaparte, conqueror of Europe, fled the field of battle. His enemy? An army of adorable, confused bunnies who just wanted a snack. It's a humbling reminder that even the mightiest leaders are not immune to the chaos of poorly planned logistics and the unexpected perils of farm animals. Remember at the beginning when I mentioned that a bear was enlisted in the Polish army? Well, here is that story. In 1942, a group of Polish soldiers traveling through Iran encountered a young boy carrying an orphaned bear cub. The soldiers, far from home and in need of morale, bought the cub for some food and a few Swiss francs. They named him Wojtek, a common Polish name meaning happy warrior. Wojtek became the company's unofficial mascot, drinking beer, smoking cigarettes, or at least eating them, and even learning to salute. But when the unit was set to deploy to Italy in 1943, they hit a snag. The British transport regulations didn't allow mascots on board. The solution? Officially enlist Wojtek as a soldier. He was given a serial number, rank, and paybook. Private Wojtek was now a legitimate member of the 22nd Artillery Supply Company of the Polish Second Corps. And he didn't just ride along. During the brutal Battle of Monte Cassino in 1944, Wojtek helped carry crates of artillery shells, some weighing over 100 pounds, from supply trucks to gun positions. He worked alongside the soldiers, never dropping a single crate, becoming a symbol of resilience and camaraderie. After the war, Wojtek couldn't return to Poland, which was now under Soviet control. Instead, he was sent to the Edinburgh Zoo in Scotland, where he lived until 1963. Former soldiers would visit him, and Wojtek would reportedly stand and salute when he heard Polish being spoken. Today, statues of Wojtek stand in Poland, Scotland, and beyond, honoring a bear who became a soldier, a hero, and a reminder that even in the darkest times, the bonds we form can be extraordinary. From 38-minute wars to dancing plagues, from international incidents over pigs to emperors fleeing from rabbits, history is stranger than any fiction we could write. And sometimes the most unbelievable moments, like a bear carrying artillery shells in the Italian mountains, are the ones that remind us of the absurdity, tragedy, and unexpected beauty of the human experience. If you enjoyed these bizarre tales from history, let me know which ones surprised you the most in the comments. And remember, the past is full of stories waiting to be unearthed.